Happy Labor Day, everyone. Welcome back to Weather on the Go, all your weather coverage on this Monday, September 2nd, 2024. In today's video, we're going to be walking you through your September forecast with temperatures and precipitation week by week through September, your severe weather forecast for September, and your September tropical weather forecast at the end of the video. So if you are new here, make sure to subscribe to the channel down below as we're quickly approaching 96,000 subscribers and getting very close to 100,000 subscribers. Thanks to all the new subscribers, all the supporters, all the older subscribers as well. I really do appreciate it. Like the video by giving it a thumbs up down below. If you do especially like today's weather forecast, leave any comments, questions, and concerns below. We'll get to those after the video. So let's look back first at August of 2024. Here is your temperature anomaly in degrees Fahrenheit, and it was a pretty warm August overall, above normal across portions of the southern plains and near the Gulf Coast. A little bit cooler than normal to near normal across the west, especially up into the Pacific Northwest, the upper Midwest, and the eastern United States. Is a pretty normal to slightly below normal August when it comes to temperature anomalies. And precipitation, very busy it was across the eastern U.S. from Maine to Florida and everywhere in between. If you guys remember Debbie, that's what dropped a lot of the rainfall here into the Carolinas, coastal Georgia, and North Florida with a lot of that rainfall there. We had a lot of convective systems, severe thunderstorms across the upper Midwest, and even some of those down in the Central Plains as well. So that's what fed into the above normal precipitation up there. You can see the most above normal is areas in the blue stretching from North Florida all the way through the Carolinas, the Mid-Atlantic, and Northeast. Also some green areas up here in the upper Midwest, the Rockies, and Pacific Northwest. Overall, it was a pretty active August when it comes to precipitation. Very dry, though, across Dixie Alley and near the Gulf Coast here it was in August, and so hopefully we can get some moisture moving forward into September. Now, let's look first at your climate update. We are still in what we call an ENSO neutral phase right now, and we are at negative 0.5. Once we pass that and get under negative 0.5, we start to get that 3-month moving average or so into that La Nina category. So we're getting very close to weak La Nina status, and it all goes to what the water temperatures are like in the equatorial Pacific Ocean. When they are leaning bluer, that means we're seeing colder water temperatures. When they lean more orange and red, that's warmer water temperature anomalies. So they're leaning blue, which means we're getting closer to that weak La Nina stage in our phase of climate. And the Climate Prediction Center has through September a 50% chance of neutral conditions continuing, with a 48% chance roughly of La Nina flipping from neutral to La Nina. And as we go, especially into next month in October, I think that really starts to transition to that weak La Nina phase. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. So let's go week by week, talking about your temperatures and precipitation through the month of September. This is your height anomalies from September 1st through the 8th, the first week in September. We got a ridge building across the west, a little bit more troughing in the east. And what that will mean for our temperatures is pretty cut and dry. It's going to be pretty warm with the ridge out west. It's going to be pretty cool with the trough out east. So that's what we're basically seeing, and the dividing line is really the Great Plains. So if you're Great Plains on east, it's going to be cooler. If you're looking at Great Plains on west, you're going to be warmer than normal for the first week of September. Precipitation, it's going to be hard pressed to get a lot of that across the northern United States. Lots of sunshine up here, so it's going to trend drier. Same thing over in the Rockies, Pacific Northwest, and southern Canada. A lot of these areas will be drier for the first week of September. Wetter conditions from the northeast down to the mid-Atlantic, but well above normal precipitation expected into the southeast near the Gulf Coast, where it has been dry that we're talking about in August, so that's good. And then back into Texas, area that needs the rain, especially West Texas there, and that severe and extreme and exceptional drought building. That's where we need the rain, so that's some good news that they're seeing above normal precipitation for the first week of September. Going into the second week now, here's your height anomalies for September 8th through the 15th. That ridge that's really building out west this week will start to slide a little bit further to the east as we go into next week. So what that means is those warmer temperatures are still there, but they're moving a little bit further off to the east as we go into next week through the 15th of September. So areas in the upper Midwest will start to warm up a little bit, and the areas in the southeast will start to cool down a little bit more as we go in towards next week. Precipitation very limited across southern Canada and the contiguous United States outside of the Gulf Coast here, Florida, and the immediate southeast. It's going to be pretty wet down here. This could be tropical induced, so a lot of this moisture could be from the tropics as we go into the next week time frame. Turning into the second half of September, this is your height anomalies for September 15th through the 23rd. This is the third week in September. Notice how the jet stream starts to flatten out. This is what we call zonal flow across the United States. So most of this air will be Pacific of origin. So that means it's not going to be super hot, but it's also not going to be cool either. So we're going to see a lot of those mild temperatures across the middle of the country, even southern Canada leaning above normal with those temperatures into the third week of September. And we're also really just not going to see a lot of storm systems traversing that zonal flow in the third week of September. So a lot of us are going to be seeing near normal to maybe even leaning slightly below normal with our precipitation. The only game in town would be Florida. And again, this could be tropical induced as we go in the third week in September. Finally, the last week of September, September 23rd through the September 30th, your height anomalies again, continuing kind of with that zonal flow. And that means, again, we're not going to be seeing overall like super hot conditions. Sure, it'll be hot in a few areas, but not like we just saw in August. I think it's going to be more, again, Pacific of origin. So the air will be mild, not particularly hot, but we're going to be seeing some milder conditions across, again, southern Canada, the contiguous United States, maybe leaning a little bit cooler or near normal in Florida, and also a little bit cooler and near normal in the Pacific Northwest. Other than that, a lot of us will be mild. Precipitation-wise, looks pretty dry in the east. We're leaning below normal there. Normal conditions, Mississippi River on west, and maybe a little bit above normal with precipitation in southern Florida. And again, this could be tropical induced again as we go in the last week of September. Here's the official forecast from the experts over there at the National Weather Service and to the Climate Prediction Center. There is above normal chances of temperatures above normal here over into the west from the Rockies into the plains and across the west in general. Equal chances of above and below normal temperatures out east. Below normal leaning though in the mid-Atlantic coast, so from New Jersey all the way down to the Carolinas, seeing below normal temperatures favored there. Precipitation looks pretty dry into the north, so the upper Midwest, Great Lakes region, very dry. That could extend back into the Rockies and then back to the Four Corners region. A little bit wetter than normal in the Pacific Northwest. Seattle down to Portland could be wet. And then above normal, we like to see this in West Texas here. We could see well above normal precipitation that extends across the south into the southeast, and Florida in particular could also be well above normal with precipitation this September. When looking at the U.S. drought monitor for the month of September, areas that could see drought develop rapidly could be the Ohio Valley down toward the mid-Mississippi Valley from Paducah, Kentucky through Indianapolis, through Cincinnati, up there towards Toledo and Akron. Another area over here into South Dakota, Nebraska, and western Iowa. So we'll be keeping an eye on areas near Omaha and Sioux Falls, and then down here into the Four Corners region, and then more of Idaho, starting to see that as well with the drought starting to develop. Here is my weather on the go severe weather forecast for the entirety of the month of September of 2024. I think a lot of the severe weather, if we get another landfalling system, whether that's a tropical depression, tropical storm, hurricane, major hurricane, whatever the case may be, that's probably where the most severe weather will be this month. So down near the Gulf Coast, Dixie Alley region in the southeast. In the orange, that's where it's likely to see severe weather at some point this month. Of course, not everybody will see it in this area, but we're keeping an eye on that. In the red, we are seeing very likely conditions for severe weather from East Texas through southern Arkansas, the entire state of Louisiana, central and southern Mississippi, central and southern Alabama, northwest Florida, including the Big Bend area, and southwestern Georgia. That's the area most at risk for severe weather this month. Now turning over to the tropics for the month of September. September is the busiest month for the hurricane season in the Atlantic Basin. And the second week of September, which we are coming up on next week, was actually the busiest time of year. So we're going to be keeping an eye on the Atlantic Basin, and also for the Eastern Pacific Basin, September is the busiest as well. So overall, the hurricane season is the busiest during the month of September. Let's look at those water temperatures here currently in the North Atlantic Basin, well above normal all across the North Atlantic outside of the mid-Atlantic coast. It's boiling in the Gulf of Mexico, it's boiling in the Caribbean and most of the main development region, especially the central and western main development region. Very, very mild here. And you could see in September, the main development region could still light up with these waves coming off of Africa and developing into something that will track more west into the Caribbean and maybe into the Yucatan or even the Gulf, or maybe even curving up the East Coast. So we'll be keeping a very close eye on that. Looking at climatology, the number of named storms per 100 years, you can see a lot of those curve up toward Bermuda, but we could still see those track westward into the Caribbean or the Gulf, so be keeping an eye on that. Same thing with hurricanes. A lot of those like to curve up further to the north, but again, we could still see them into the Caribbean and the Gulf in the month of September. Moving over to the eastern Pacific Basin, it's pretty warm, especially those shelf waters in southern and western Mexico. Pretty cool waters up here in the Baja of California, but we are still seeing some warmer waters out there in the eastern Pacific Basin. But even with that, we're not really seeing a lot of that showing up for precipitation here. We may have a few storms that are still named in September, but honestly, we are heading into a weak La Nina or getting very close to one. So the activity in the eastern Pacific Basin is likely to drop off here as we get closer and closer to that La Nina phase of climate. But if we do see any systems, those shelf waters are important because that could enhance the number of named storms and hurricanes in that region. But obviously, as they track west into the cooler waters toward Hawaii, they will likely start to fall off as we go through the month of September. So thank y'all for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel down below for the latest weather information right at your fingertips here. You get it with one click of a button. Subscribe. Make sure to turn on all post notifications for any future videos and live streams here on the channel. Make sure to press the like button, the thumbs up button down below, especially if you did like today's weather forecast. Leave any comments, questions, and concerns below. I'll get to those later on today, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their Labor Day out there.